Glenn Schumann spoke to the media last week, but also a new defensive coordinator spoke to the media last week. We've got two, and T-Rob had some interesting things to say about Georgia.
Yes, sir.
And another SEC school that we'll talk about today in the Locked On Bulldogs podcast.
You are Locked On Bulldogs, your daily podcast on the Georgia Bulldogs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back. This is Locked On Bulldogs. Thanks for making us your first listen of the day. You are why we do this, the everydayers. He is Daniel. I'm Clint. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel, FanDuel.com. More on them in a moment. Daniel, you and I are back talking about Georgia football like fans do, only as fans do. If you want us, if you want to pay me to give you links to pull up things that are free to you on the internet.
Yeah, okay.
I'll happily take your money.
Sure, that sounds fine. That's not really the business model we've ever operated this podcast under, but
that's not the business model that we are. No. We are for fans by fans, talking every single day, the news, notes, everything that you need to know about UGA. We love it. Daniel, we are just days away.
Oh my goodness.
From kickoff. Just days.
You can see it now. You understand, like you've been on a long car trip, kids in the back seat. They're not happy with you. They're just, we're getting stuff, French fries being thrown up you. But you can now see the destination. Right. It's not just on the map.
No.
Ahead of you. You can literally, with your eyeballs, pinpoint it. The destination is Mercedes-Benz Stadium. It is the Clemson Tigers. It is August 31st, and it is right around the corner at time of this recording. We are just a handful of weeks away from our eyes on Georgia football, and that is incredibly good news. We've got a lot to cover in that time. There's fall camp stuff. There's buzz from certain players. We're hearing things.
Frazier about to show y'all.
We have some feelings. Clint's already doing tomorrow's episode, but he can't help himself.
I can't help.
We have a lot of feelings about a lot of things. We're going to get to that. We've also got some season win total locks we're going to be giving out next week, Clint. We got lots of things we're going to be getting to. But today we teased it last week. And let's talk about T-Rob. He met with the media. And let me just open with this, Clint.
Please do.
Because he said some things that I thought were interesting. He made some comments about certain players that I thought were interesting. He said some stuff about the secondary, as you would expect, as that's the area that he's, kind of seems to be focused in on. But the overarching feeling that you get from watching this man interact with the media tells a really fun story about Malachi Starks and going running together and all this. This guy is a treasure.
He's the best.
And if you're an Alabama fan, you hate yourself.
And you're here to let us know how wrong you think we are.
We know that you're here listening to us talk about the guy that
say more.
You just saw him walk out the door, just turn tail and walk. He made some pointed comments about the difference between Alabama and Georgia, but before we get into any of that stuff, just the charisma and likability of this guy could not be higher. If you're a Georgia fan, he's the kind of guy that you instantly see and you're like, I know why he's such a good recruiter. And it's not, as a Georgia Tech fan would have you to believe, because he's cheating. It's because he walks into a room with a young man, and not only can he talk the talk, but he can back it up with what he's done for young men's careers throughout years and years of experience coaching defense in the SEC. He's got everything that you would want in a defensive coordinator, which is probably why Kirby said, I want him. And then what he did was he picked up the phone and he said, why don't you come to Georgia? And quite honestly, before he even got into any of the differences between Georgia and Alabama, T-Rob in no uncertain terms said, why did I come to Georgia? Well, I made a business decision. I made a decision about my future. And my future wants to be tied to a guy like Nick Saban, a guy like Kirby Smart, a guy like Will Muschamp. And I wasn't going to get that at the place where I was.
What are you saying?
Because there ain't none of them guys left.
I want to be with the best. So I left the place that doesn't have the best for a place that does. End of statement.
You understand? Because I want to grow my career. That's what he said. And Georgia's a place where I know if I come and I put in the work and I study under a guy like Kirby, well, I've got eyeballs. I can see what happens to the defensive coordinators who are tutored by Kirby Smart. Like
Mel Tucker.
They just go off and get paid and succeed in the coaching ranks. It's sort of the handwriting on the wall couldn't be more obvious. And if you're T-Rob, I think the fact that it's so obvious to him as a Georgia fan should speak volumes to you about the degree of gravity that Kirby Smart now has in this game. It's not just that we think, Clint, he is the apex of all college football coaches. That is a painfully obvious position for this podcast to take, that Kirby Smart's the greatest football coach in the game. Like, of course we think that. What else are we gonna think? But it's very obvious to everyone around.
Not you and I, named homers.
Yeah. But a guy who's got the opportunity, I repeat, to be the defensive coordinator at Alabama.
That's what he was offered.
The job is his. And he said, nah, I'll go be the co-defensive coordinator under Kirby Smart so I can, quote, learn from Glenn Schumann, is what T-Rob said.
He said he would rather, okay, just so we're fully, just let's connect the dots.
Yeah.
He would rather be under Glenn, who's under Kirby.
That's a better position than
being the second person at Alabama.
That says some things to me. If you're a Georgia fan, it should say some things to you. We got a lot more on what T-Rob had to say, the differences between Georgia and Alabama, what he saw in the job, and what he sees in the players on the field. All that and more coming up right after this.
But first is eBay Motors. eBay Motors is fantastic. Daniel and I love the older cars because they can last forever if you put the right parts into them, which we love very, very much. That's exactly what eBay allows us to do. Millions of parts for your MVP, your ride or die continues going, whether that's exhaust, whether that's performance, whether that's interior, exterior, appearance, it doesn't matter. eBay Parts got the parts for your car that it needs. Right? However, right now, ebaymotors.com. Millions of parts for your MVP only applies in US if you put your make, model, year in there. Guaranteed fit, meaning the part you're looking at guarantees to fit your car if it's in America, if it's on eBay Motors. The only place that has that. If not, they're going to fix you right up. They're going to get the right part, the right price every single time. eBay Motors, millions of parts for your MVP. T-Rob is a treasure already, Daniel. He is talking the talk, but not just that. He actually walks the walk. He actually gets those recruits. Again, the charisma is abundant. The ability to talk shop is abundant. His knowledge of the game is, I mean, I would like to say it's one of the tops, but again, he self-admitted he's below Glenn Schumann, which is kind of ludicrous in this whole thing to think about that really quick, which is why, once more.
Also, his mentor stepped aside to take an analyst role so that he could continue coaching.
You see what we're saying here?
But free up a spot for two. This defensive staff is...
If you're a defensive player, what 4 dudes who can abjectly get after it, make you the best version of yourself on the planet. I just don't understand. I mean, we're seeing, by the way, news of this decommit from Georgia, 4-star defensive lineman. That's because maybe a few are coming in that understand this. Maybe speaking 2 or 3 or 4.
Speaking of T-Rob's ability to recruit, that we didn't just get a new corner into the fold. That didn't just, that wasn't T-Rob. That wasn't him. He didn't have his fingerprints all over that, did he?
Clearly not.
No, clearly not. I actually have some thoughts on the defensive coaching staff. We may have to do a whole episode on it if we have some time, but I think there's a lot we could say about the staff. But let's get back to Coach Robinson and this defensive group. I did think that some of the stuff he said about the players on the field, Clint, was interesting. Now you got to speak a little Curbinese, right? A little T-Robbies here, because you can try to bait him into these answers, but this man is well schooled under Kirby Smart, under Nick Saban. He knows what he's allowed to say. He knows what he's not allowed to say. And so you could try to bait him into some of these answers. But I did think it was interesting. Although there were plenty of things he didn't say, I did think some of the words he did choose to say were interesting. For example, he's asked specifically about Jonel Aguero, a player that we're excited about. Is that fair to say, Clint? A player that we think is going to contribute significantly this year at Georgia. He's asked about Jonel. And T-Rob says, not he's doing great, he's got the position locked down, he's whatever. T-Rob says he's competing really well.
I love this man already.
He's competing really well about Jonel Aguero.
He got that Kirby lexicon open.
No, he knows it. Now, but read between the lines with me here, Clint.
Go ahead. Translate it for the folk.
Because if the most important thing to the coaching staff is the level to which you are working and competing in practice, that tells me you are more likely to be in line for a starting role, in line for a significant role than the other way around. I think you could read that and say, well, if he's competing, that must mean he's not quite there yet. No. To Kirby and company, competing well means you are there. That is the mark of a person who is ready to contribute. You compete in practice first. And the further proof of this is that in that same breath, in that same sentence, Clint, this is where you gotta put on the detective hat. You gotta dig deep. In that same sentence, he said, nobody on our team has a job. Malachi Starks doesn't have a job right now. So
go ahead.
Put 2 and 2 together here. He says, how's Jonel doing at the star position? He says, well, he's competing hard. He's working really hard in practice. Nothing's guaranteed.
He's doing everything we ask of him and expect of him.
Nobody has a job. In fact, on the first day of fall camp, Malachi Starks didn't have a job. Everyone's competing. I'm sorry, hold on. So the most salient comp that you could think of
for
Jonel Aguero,
even if it was a Freudian slip,
they were there somewhere in your mind. It was there. The best comp you could come up with for where Jonel is on the depth chart is to say that also Malachi Starks, the first team All-American safety, has to compete for his job in the same way that Jonel Aguero has to compete for his job.
This is what we're saying.
Speaks some things about the young man's potential availability to step in and really contribute to this team right away. We're excited about Jonel this year.
Thrilled. And just so you know, if this is any indication, which it sounds like T-Rob is speaking truth here, that they're on similar trajectories. They're in the same category and class. it also means KJ Bolden is in the same trajectory and class, type of person and type. Early news out of camp is them DBs are absolutely killers back there.
Now, come back for the third segment. Those of you, if you know, you know. Come back for the third segment because T-Rob also had some things to say about the freshman defensive backs that wasn't what we wanted to hear, but was it what we wanted to hear? But was it? All that and more next.
But first, these FanDuel. FanDuel.com is a place that Daniel and I love to go. Right now, sports aren't sportsing because playoffs, Olympics, everything is over, but that's okay because we are just days away from Daniel doing a whole episode of our bet that we do every single year that I've won 4 times in a row. That FanDuel
is how you make money on FanDuel.
Season win totals.
People. Season win totals is how you make money on FanDuel.
It is. It's the way to go. So right now, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost and a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Head over to FanDuel.com. Start making most of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. FanDuel.com. All right, Daniel. T-Rob said something that you and I may not wanted to have heard, but maybe hearing it was okay. Tell the people what you understood T-Rob getting after.
He's asked about the freshman corners, specifically the freshman defensive backs, but particularly the freshman corners. Ellis Robinson, the most namely of that group, but others involved as well. And he's quick to come out and say they're learning. It's hard. That's a difficult position. You know, we mentioned on the last episode, he talked at length about how you make a mistake at corner, you make a mistake at safety, at defensive back, at 7 points, you give up a touchdown, it could cost your team the ball game. It's not the worst thing in the world to have experience in those positions. We think Georgia does have experience in those positions. He's asked pointedly, why is it so hard to start at corner as a freshman? Why is that the position that's very difficult to start at? And he goes on at length about how these young men are learning the playbook and it's a difficult scheme and they're coming in and they're adapting to the speed of the game and corner's tough and you can't make any mistakes back there and it's difficult to learn and it's much faster than whatever. And then he gets to the end of his answer and that's it. He could just close the book, Clint.
We could be done. We could move on.
We could move on. There was no follow-up question being asked. But he can't help himself but to say, but I mean, that's not to say they can't.
Hold on.
It's not to say that a freshman can't come in and start right away. In fact, everywhere I've been in my coaching life,
this is important. Listen,
we have had freshmen who were ready to come in and contribute right away at corner. Almost as if the question was asked in a way of like, well, we know that the freshmen aren't going to contribute this year. Tell us why it's so hard to contribute. And he answers the question, and then he wants to make sure you know. I reject the premise of the question. I don't accept what you've asked me. Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah. So, what does that mean for Ellis Robinson and company? I don't know. But based on the things we hear out of camp, Clint, based on the things that we have seen, I'm not saying he's going to come in and start against Clemson. That's not at all what I'm saying. I think Georgia's got 2 better options at corners right now and a better option at start.
100%.
But he's going to play this year.
Yeah.
Clint. He's going to play this year.
And
Clint.
not mop-up duty.
No, he's going to play meaningful snaps this year, and he may play meaningful snaps against Clemson week 1. Clint.
Yeah, 100%. If you hear T-Rob, again, Georgia coaches will not lie to you. They will tell you what they want you to hear. They will dictate the narrative.
But they won't tell you false information. They just won't tell you the information you want to know.
That's different. That's
different. Very different. These are nuances that are important in a marriage as well. Like these are important things in a relationship that you have to keep in mind. It's a different thing.
It doesn't come with a how-to book. There's no you have to understand this on the fly, and if you don't, that's
piece it together.
You gotta don't be mad at it. Don't hate the player, hate the game. Okay,
right.
we are players that know how to speak the language. Weird analogy for the fact that we're talking about how to go ahead and have a great marriage when I'm talking players.
It's weird, and it's not our weirdest, but it is a weird analogy. We're deep
about
into the third segment now, Clint. We're deep into the third
segment. If you want
now.
weird and off the rails, come back for the Saturday post-game instant reaction show in 3 weeks, because that's where Daniel and I come this close to being fired every
week. Zach, how you doing? We're happy to be here.
We always pull it together, but
so far we do.
we always
I'm only saying things that are true. So far, we have always pulled it together.
But if what T-Rob is saying and he wants us to hear and practice reports are the same, Ellis Robinson, KJ Bolden, it turns out we might have 4 corners that are just bona fide studs.
Yeah.
We might have 3 safeties that are bona fide studs. We might have 2 stars, bona fide studs that are locking down receivers and Carson Beck early on in practice and giving them fits.
Is the offense any good, Clint? We're going to get the reports out of camp. We're going to get to a lot of this tomorrow on tomorrow's episode, so we'll talk about that then. T-Rob is a national treasure. Alabama fans, my sincerest
we didn't want him. Didn't want him.
You never offered anyone else the job. It was always going to be him. And then when the offensive coordinator that came from Washington, when he left to go to the NFL, you didn't want him either, even though he had already accepted the job and was coming. You didn't want him. He was never a choice. He was never a candidate. You realize in that building right now, Clint, there are no shades of Nick Saban. Like there's not even a whisper of the Nick Saban. Without meaning to, I genuinely believe without wanting to, Kalen DeBoer has come in and eradicated all trace of Nick Saban.
100% has.
And that's a strategy, I guess. Like that's something. Alabama fans, you feel pretty good about that? We just bleached the record of Nick Saban, the greatest football coach of all time, from the program, and now there's not even a trace of him left.
Love it.
But cool, we'll just take them all. We'll just take them all over.
We're fine with it.
I'm fine. Are you fine? We all seem fine.
He's Daniel. I'm Clint. We're fine. Come on back tomorrow. Our first listeners will come on back. Our everydayers. We'll talk to you guys then.
See ya.